Good morning. Welcome to Truth to Power. As you notice, you have someone different sitting in the seat today. I am Keith Bennett. I'm standing in or sitting in for Darwin Griffin, our usual host. And I have two exciting guests with me today and a very, very important topic that we want all of you guys to kind of lean into and listen. And if you have questions, our call-in numbers are 313-868-0342, 313-868-0351, 313-868-4336. Again, you are listening to I'm watching the Truth to Power show. I am Keith Bennett sitting in for Darwin Griffin. And today's guest, as we talk about spiritual warfare, none better to have here with me, and I'm excited about this conversation, is Dr. Portia Lockett to my right and Pastor Henry McClinton to my right as well. Good morning.
Good morning.
Portia, I want to have you take your time and introduce the people that are watching and listening to who you are.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here to Truth to Power. I am Dr. Portia Lockett, and I am the CEO and founder of the Azel B'nai Lockett Foundation, where we help you heal, offer you hope, and hold your heart as you're traveling through any type of grieving journey. We provide education and resources in order to support those individuals who are just passing through this journey. I am also the Director of Spiritual Care and Community Affairs for the Detroit Medical Center's Adult Central Campus, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Good. Tell us a little bit about your foundation. How did it get started? And I know it's very touching and sensitive.
Yes. So, for years, for about 20 years, I've been in the space of supporting people who are grieving by being a chaplain and a spiritual advisor, as well as a grief recovery method specialist. And in December of 2020, unfortunately, my middle king, his life was taken on the streets of Atlanta. And during that time, God spoke to me and said, you know what, I'm going to get the glory out of this. And so my assignment was to start the Azel B'nai Lockett Foundation. His initials are ABL because God is able to do exceedingly abundantly more than we can ever hope for or ask for. And so that's when the journey began with the foundation. And so going back to what I stated before, here to help you heal, offer you hope, and hold your heart. So what does that look like? Mm-hmm. We provide several programs throughout the year. We have partnered up with Wayne County Community College. And so we've had several programs there entitled the Permission Series.
And I've been to.
Yes, Permission to Grieve, because there are so many people who don't understand that you have permission to grieve. Some people understand it's okay to grieve, and some people don't understand that they have permission to grieve. However your grieving journey takes you, that's where you are in that space. Grief does not have a final destination. It may never be over for some individuals, but how you maneuver through it, how you travel through it and get the support that you need, get the help that you need, can make all the difference in the world. And then we also have permission to heal. What does that look like? Yes. Because some people may say, you know what, I want to be a part of a grief share group. I want to be a part of the grief recovery method. I want to be a part of a grief support group, or I may just want some support one-on-one with someone who specializes in grief and trauma.
Yes.
You know, some people just say, well, I'm just going to go to church and I know God is going to get me through. But I do believe that God gives us resources in order to move through the journey. And then we have permission to live and laugh, because sometimes when you are going through grief, some people feel that it's taken away from your grief journey if you pause and laugh. But I do believe that laughter is powerful, powerful medicine. And so we bring individuals in and we talk about the importance of laughter during grieving. And so we bring in comedians to make us laugh, and we laugh together, we cry together, you know. And then we have permission to love again, because you know, as you know, sometimes when you're going through that grief journey, you forget how to love yourself. You forget how to love those individuals who are still present. Or if you've been in a relationship and that relationship has dismantled, or that person has transitioned, how to fall back in love again, and the importance of surrounding yourself with loving people.
Yes.
And then we talk about permission to move forward. So how do we go from A to C in this journey? And we give you tools to be able to, in order to do that. And also we come up with permission to plan ahead, which we're going to be adding on this upcoming May the 17th at our Permission To Day, which we're going to incorporate all of those permissions that I just mentioned. And so when you plan ahead, you take a look at in our community, we find that approximately 50% of the African American community, unfortunately, does not have a life insurance policy.
Correct.
We don't take the time out to make a plan. So we're going to talk about the importance of that, the importance of putting your will and your trust in place so that when you leave this place, whoever is responsible for you, they won't have any problems. There won't be the family dynamics, which we often face. And so we're going to bring this together, Permission Today. It's going to be May 17th at Wayne County Community College from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And you can get your tickets on Eventbrite. The tickets are only $25 and 2 for $40. We're going to feed you breakfast and
you
lunch.
feed people
We're going to have
well.
a good time. We're going to have entertainment. Usually we have about 200 people that are present, and we have mental health experts that are there, ministers that are there, people who specialize on that grief journey and in all the subject matters that we talked about, love and planning ahead. We're going to have individuals who will be able to talk us through and walk us through what that looks like. So we
Good.
invite all people who want to come out and participate and get your healing on. We're
Good.
giving you permission to be healed. We're going to hold your heart as you go through that journey.
Good. And it's good that people know that grief is just not with death.
Yes.
It could be a loss of a relationship. It could be a loss of employment. I've sat in your groups and
Yes.
I've heard things. I'm like, oh, did I grieve that? Did I really give my chance?
Losing your business.
opportunity?
And you
Losing
take a
your
look
bus-
at what we experienced, during COVID.
Yes.
I do believe we were all experiencing
Yes.
some type of grief. We
Yes.
think about we couldn't socialize. We couldn't go to our various places of worship.
Yes.
I couldn't get my hair done, couldn't get my nails done.
Oh,
so some
Lord.
of them were grieving about that because like, oh, I can't go outside.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you think about all those
All
things
those
that we were
things.
accustomed to being able to do.
Yes.
We couldn't go to the bowling alleys. We couldn't go to the movies. And so the world just shifted
Yes.
on so many different levels. And so people were just in complete shock because, again, we go back to the most common theme when we think about loss. It is death.
Yes.
And so during COVID, we lost a lot of
lot
loved
of
ones. We lost friends. And even the celebration of life, the funerals
Was
completely
different.
looked different. So
Yes.
you're grieving because you couldn't give the send-off
Yes.
that you wanted to of your
Yes.
loved one.
And so when we talk later on, we're going to bring you back to that because our world has never come back really from COVID. And that's where the spiritual warfare kind of has taken over.
Yes.
Brother, Pastor, Henry
sir.
McClinton, my friend,
Well,
Who are
first,
you?
Let me just say thank you for the opportunity. And I believe in giving people flowers while they're here. And I just want to say that I've known you for many years, and I was trying to remember when we first met. But the work that you have done in this community is legendary.
wow.
Lives of people, particularly men, have been transformed because of your commitment. First of all, your relationship with the Lord and your commitment to invest, to pour into lives of men, and particularly those that others may not hold in value at all. We have people that others would just assume throw away, lock them up, throw away the key. And I just want to publicly say, you the man. And I'm honored to call you my
Well,
friend.
I'm sitting with the man and the woman and the lady now, so I feel good. I'm in good company.
And Dr. Lockett, I think I've seen you before, but I don't think we've ever really had a conversation, and I appreciate the work that you do. So I'm a pastor of Berean Chapel Church. It's located on the northwest side of Detroit on Pembroke between Livernois and Wyoming, between Otter Drive and 8 Mile. Coming up on 19 years as pastor there, and now 39 years in ministry.
Wow.
in total. Lifelong resident of the city of Detroit. In fact, ironically, I used to walk past a church I now pastor going from 4th to 8th grade. And if you had
Okay.
told me back then, you're going to pastor this church
Was that
one day.
Bowling School there?
No, it was, I went to Higginbotham,
Higginbotham.
Elementary,
Okay.
and then Region 5 Middle School. And we
Okay.
had to catch the bus
Okay.
over by Higginbotham. And I would have just told you, just say no to drugs.
Okay. Okay.
But it's been great. Our mission at Berean is threefold. It is to know God, to know who is the true God.
Mm.
And then in knowing him, how now do I organize my life to please God? And then thirdly, to make Christ known.
Mm.
Mission is to know God, to please God,
and
to
make
make
him
Christ known. And our vision is that the world can see it.
Okay. Okay.
Right. I'm also director of community engagement for an accredited graduate school called the International Institute for Restorative Practices.
Yes.
That's been a a lifelong mission for me. So just a little of my history. I destroyed the myth that all black boys could play basketball when I was in middle school. So I got interested in politics and volunteered for Coleman Young's
Yes, I
first
remember that.
campaign back in 1973.
Yeah.
And we remained friends and ended up on his personal staff. I was an executive assistant to him the last 7 years of his administration.
History sitting right here. Okay.
And served as a personal aide. If you ever watch West Wing, I was his Charlie for 3.5 years.
Okay.
And then the last 3.5, I was the executive branch liaison to city council. I was at the city council table
Okay.
every day.
Okay.
Tell people it dramatically increased my prayer life. It
Okay.
was a great experience.
I bet it did.
But I left there and then ran the city's warming center. The last time Ford Auditorium was used, we
Okay.
used it as, I like to say I ran a bed and breakfast for 300 people
Okay.
from November to March.
I bet that was interesting.
Oh, that's a whole nother
Okay.
that's a whole nother show all by
Okay.
itself. But it was a blessing. And then I became Southeast Michigan Area Director for Prison Fellowship Ministry. So
Yes.
I was training volunteers, going into prisons, working with families, the families of incarcerated persons, and working with churches. And it was there that I learned about a process called restorative justice. And we can get into this later, and then later learned about restorative practice, and I can rope that all in. So I'll give it back
Well,
to
your
you.
work in restorative practices is renowned. I thought I knew it until I sat down and watched you and listened to you, and then I had occasion to travel with you to Pennsylvania,
Oh, yeah,
participate in a conference years ago. We
Yes.
getting old and we
I know,
piling up
man.
things that we've done. And our community was embracing that a lot
Yes.
before COVID. I don't know how well that's going now. It takes me back, and why I chose this topic of spiritual warfare is because everything I see now is almost like I'm a pincushion. And I don't react to it the way other people react to it. I react to it as in the spiritual
Right.
realm of what I'm seeing. And when I'm trying to communicate to other people, especially young people, what I'm seeing and what they're being drawn into, they can't understand it. And I don't have the faith-based background or the pastoral backgrounds as you guys, the ministry backgrounds, but I've worked with next year to be 5 decades of young people and our
Wow.
people, low income, people who are suffering, disproportionately affected by illiteracy, crime, victims and victimizer
Right.
perpetrators. And we may have met inside the prisons because that's where I was at
bet.
quite a bit. Met Dr. Portia in family dynamics years
Okay.
ago, and that's a whole different story that brought us together. And so I look at why we're here today because this is an intentional conversation. You didn't know Dr. Lockett until she got here, but the work that you guys do has to be collaborated
Yeah.
and brought forward to our community. So I think it's intentional. I think that our footprints have been right alongside of each other. I think that it's needed right now. And so while we're here today is to talk about spiritual warfare, what I've noticed is nothing looks different, and it shouldn't. Next week, I will turn 70 years of age.
That's it.
And so that is a blessing. And I thank God for it every morning. I'm not there yet, but I tell him, let me get there to see it. Let me get there. Nothing looks different, and it shouldn't look different. But nothing looks different. Nothing looks the same spiritually either. The doctrines now that our community are operating from, totally different. And I see people who don't have a clue of what's going on now. So that's what we're going to dive in today.
Okay.
And I think our audience wants to hear that. The framework of our conversation, was reading it, and it says spiritual warfare is the difference between indifferently not trying to sin and consciously trying not to sin. Can you break that down to me? I'm going to stop there because it says the spiritual warfare is the difference between indifferently not trying to sin and consciously trying not to sin. That's deep to me. Is it as deep as I'm making it out to be, or is it the same thing? Because I was confused. as I was reading, and I was in the Word, and I was in some other books trying to figure this out. But I'll go on and let you guys think about that. It is a battle against spiritual forces of evil. The three main types of spiritual warfare are the world, the devil, and our flesh. The key to successful spiritual warfare is finding biblical balance. And that's what I just described, that our communities, our lives, our relationships, this world, especially this country, is out of balance. We do not wrestle with flesh and blood, but against rulers and against authorities, against cosmic powers over this present darkness, against spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places. Ephesians 6, chapter 12 verse. That's going to lead us into this conversation. Now, the conversation, so those who are watching, is not going to be what you would call a normal biblical conversation. We were really going to talk as we're just citizens, we're fathers, we're mothers, we're sisters and brothers in this journey through life, and we just want to talk about that. The first chapters of Genesis, the story of God's redemption of the cosmos, is framed as conflict between God and the forces of darkness. We have learned the very first humans found themselves caught up in that spiritual warfare, good versus evil. So, every morning when I wake up, whether I turn on the TV, the radio, if I look out my window, if I venture out my house, I see that good versus evil. I hear it in conversations. I see people, whether it's in a cleaners, a grocery store, whether it's I hear mothers and daughters or fathers and sons, they're in this battle for, I don't think we even know why we're battling anymore. I used to think it was validation. And so you talk about my work that I've done. I thought young black men that were captured by the system, captured in that criminal element, that kind of dysfunction, were seeking validation, that they were spiritually deprived. That's what I always felt. And that was the secret to my work, is trying to touch them in places that others had not touched them. And it was a spiritual deprivation that I seen. Now, we described it a lot as illiteracy and things of that nature, but it was a spiritual deprivation that I think. Well, are we there now? Are we suffering spiritually because there's not enough of it flowing from one person to another?
Yeah, so I would take us back to, I often say, everything you really need to know about God, about man, about sin, about Satan, about redemption is actually found in the first 4 chapters of Genesis. And if you get a clarity on that, the rest of the Bible and our lives just reaffirms what's there.
Okay.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Okay.
There's nothing new. There's nothing that's going on now that is really new.
Okay.
It's refried beans.
Okay.
It's the same old thing.
Okay.
And what do I mean by that? In Genesis chapter 2, God made the statement. He had authorized Adam to name everything.
Mm-hmm.
And in Genesis 2:18, he says, "It's not good for the man to be alone. I will make for him a helper that is fit for him." The word fit there in the original language means in front of, in the sight of, opposite. Now, what was beautiful was that Adam didn't know he had a need at that point. Adam got done naming everything, and he looked around and basically said, wait a minute, there's nothing like me. And at that point, God did the first surgery, knocked him out, popped out a rib, created the woman. The brother woke up, and he's got the right to name everything, right? He wakes up, looks up, and said, whoa, man. Mm-hmm. God says, okay, that's what we're going to call. We're going to call her woman. But then, right after that, you'll read this. It says, they were both naked, and they were not ashamed. The literal Hebrew word there, ashamed, is bush. And what it encapsulates is the anger the frustration, the confusion, the feeling of being overwhelmed when something has happened that shouldn't have happened.
Okay.
It could have been self-inflicted, something we did to ourselves, or it could have been imposed, something that was done to us. But watch this. It is the evidence of a lack of trust in the true God.
Hmm.
And it said at that point, they were naked, but they were not ashamed. There was no anger. There was no frustration. There was no confusion. There was no feeling of being overwhelmed. And there was no lack of trust in the one true God.
Okay.
That's
Wow.
how they started out.
Okay.
Jump to chapter 3. Satan presents himself in the garden and has a conversation with Eve. And he said, has God said? And here's the root cause of every human problem.
Okay.
The question is, do we know what God has said? Do we trust what God has said? Right? He asked her, can you eat of all the fruits of the tree of the garden? She said, we can eat of all of them except this one. We can't touch it or eat it, because if we touch it or eat it, we will surely die. He says to her, you won't die. Number one, what you said is not true. And note, it was a half-truth, because he knew what God had said.
Mm-hmm.
He said to her, you won't die. And he was right. If she touched it, she wouldn't die. But that's not what the guy said. He said, you won't die. For God knows in the day that you eat of it, you will be like God. You will determine for yourself what is right or wrong.
Mm. Wow.
So it says she looked at the fruit and made 3 determinations. 1, it was good for food. Translation, I can meet my legitimate physical need outside of the design, the will, and the purpose of God, and there'll be no consequence to that. Then she said, it was pleasant to the eye. Translation, I can meet my emotional need outside of the design, the will, and the purpose of God, and there'll be no consequence to it. And then she said, the fruit was something to be desired in order to make one wise. Wisdom in Scripture is, in light of the fact that God exists in all of his attributes, and you take all the names of God and they describe who he is.
Mm-hmm.
What she said was, in spite of who he is, I can look at my situation and determine for myself what to do, and there's no consequence from God.
Wow.
So I become God. I decide, right? So she takes a bite of fruit, and then she presents it to Adam. Now the scripture is explicit. She was deceived.
Mm-hmm.
She was deceived. In fact, I can't wait to get to meet Adam, because in my own mind, I don't have any scriptural text for this, but I'm just wondering if the brother said, look, that tree over there, don't eat it. You know what? Just don't touch it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he added to what God had said. She was confused, or maybe she came up with it in her own mind. But either way, she was deceived. But Adam was not. Adam looked at that piece of fruit with the bite mark in it. And now something just happened that shouldn't have happened. You can imagine he's a little bit angry. Woman, what'd you do?
Mm-hmm.
He's a little confused. What do we do now? He's overwhelmed. And nowhere in that passage at that point does he ask God anything.
Wow.
Right? But then what did he do? He took a bite. There are 4 ways that all of us in our humanity respond when something happens that shouldn't have happened. We all, and by our nature, we all do it. The first shame response was, he knew if I eat this, it will kill me. I will die. God told him, the day you eat of it, you will surely die. He took a bite anyway. So the first shame response is self-destructive. We do something self-destructive.
Mm-hmm.
The second shame response is avoidance. What's avoidance? They sold fig leaves together. Now, avoidance is creating a distraction so I don't have to deal with the real issue and you can't see it. Right? But here's the problem. I tell my folks, I say, when you sin, the very first thing you lose is your mind. Because if you've been walking around butt naked since you were created, now you're sporting a leaf, you've exposed some stuff, right? You're trying to ignore it, but your attempt to ignore actually becomes evidence of what's happening.
Well, let's
Go ahead.
hold on to that. We're
Okay.
going to take a break,
Okay.
and we'll see you right back at Truth to Power.
Clean up on aisle 5. Sounds like my life right now. Just one big mess.
What's going on?
It's my property taxes.
What?
I am behind and I am so worried that I'm going to lose my house. I can pay some of it, but I can't pay it all at once.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm Eric Sabri, the Wayne County Treasurer. The last thing I want is for anyone to lose their property to tax foreclosure. We have assistance programs to help. Visit us at treasurer.waynecounty.com and we'll help you keep your home. We're here to help. Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Justice for Mario Willis. Truth. Facts. Evidence. Mattered. Log into justiceformariowillis.com. Read for yourself.
Thank you for coming back to Truth to Power. We left off with Pastor McClinton.
Cool of the day, and they went and hid behind the bushes, right? It made sense to them to go hide. So the first,
Because previously they hadn't hid from each other.
no, they hadn't hid from each other and had not tried to hide from God.
Yes.
They hid behind the bush, and I see the humor of God. So God says, Adam, where are you? I have a picture of my grandbabies when they were small. They come to my house, jump up on the couch, pull a blanket over their head. They're under there giggling and laughing. I'd run through the house. Somebody call the police. They stole my babies. Where are they? Where are they? And they finally throw the blanket down and say, here we are, Pop, Pop. They go, Pop, 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 we're good. Adam and Eve did the same thing. They put something between them and God, and I believe between them and each other. See, we were created for relationship, but we unintentionally
Wow. Okay.
put things between us and between God. Instead of running to God, they ran from him.
Let's stop there
Yeah.
for a second. We were created for relationships.
I'm going to give you a word. Tell me the first thing that comes to mind. The word community. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
A group of people.
A group of
Commune.
people. Commune. What was the very first demonstration of community?
Was
When he
Gave-
gave Adam Eve.
his helpmate.
Actually, no.
No.
Okay.
The first demonstration
Was
of
God
community
in Adam?
is Genesis 1:1. And in the Hebrew, it says, in English Bible, it says, in the beginning, God. But I believe in the Hebrew Bible, it says, God in the beginning. So before the beginning began, there was God. There was community. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. And we were created, he said, let us make man in our image. We were created for the purpose to reflect community, right? We were created not to be God, but to reflect him in the earth.
Okay.
Okay? So that's where community
Okay.
began.
But it's interesting because I think that that's the breakdown we're seeing is in relationships at every level of our society and every level of our community.
Yeah. So they ran and hid. God said, where are you? Adam said, well, I hid because I was afraid. So part of the running is fear, because in our hearts we know that we've done wrong. So rather than run to God, we run from him. And God said to him, you know, he threw him a softball. He said, why are you afraid? He said, because I was naked. He said, well, who told you you were naked? Have you eaten of the fruit that I told you not to eat? The answer to that question is yes. That's not what homeboy said. He said, that woman that you gave me the fruit, and I did eat.
And we're still doing that, pointing at each other.
That's
the
the
blame.
fourth shame response. You can do that three ways. You can do it verbally. I can attack you verbally. I can attack you emotionally, or I can attack you physically, up to and killing you. Right? The last thing, and remember, God put them out of the garden. He put a flaming sword around the tree of life, because if they had eaten of the tree of life, what we're seeing now would go on for eternity. He put them out of the garden, put a flaming sword around the tree of life, but he did one other thing before he put them out of the garden. Scripture says God prepared coats of skin for them. And here's the good news. You can't get coats of skin without shedding blood. Without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. And God put a covering. It was a Christophany. It was a picture of Christ, the coming Christ. And I believe it didn't say what the coat was. I believe it was a lamb, because Jesus Christ is the Lamb of God that taketh away the sins of the world. The last point is this. God gave them, people say, well, you know, why does God allow evil? Because in order to love, you have to have free will. You have to have the option not to love. Right?
Yes.
You have to make a choice. So before the foundation of the world, God knew what man would do. He made the choice to demonstrate his love toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So the ability to come to Christ, to be made right with God, is available because of the pre-plan of God himself. He didn't wait for us. He's eternal.
He's eternal. So, relationships,
Yes.
pointing fingers at each other.
Yep.
That started and is still going on now. And it's at its height now, especially in our community, all over the world, because we're pointing. And what I've noticed is that as a community, especially of people of color, black men and black women are constantly battling, constantly fighting, constantly pointing fingers at each other, constantly blaming, constantly sinning. And so we're making choices every day. Talk to us, Dr. Portia, about the choices from a woman's perspective that we're making that feeds into the spiritual warfare that you've seen as a mother, a wife, and your work.
Well, one choice, I just start here, is that the fact that every morning when we wake up, we have the ability and the capacity to be able to make choices throughout the entire day. When I wake up in the morning, I make a choice, a conscious decision to thank God before I even get started in my day. I don't know what I'm going to face, because every day is different. I don't know what's going to happen in this next 24 hours, in this next moment, this next second, but I choose to thank God first. And after I thank him, then I go into my meditation, and I'll find a scripture that I'm going to stand on for that particular day, and I just hone in on it. I'm like, okay, this scripture is going to get me through this day. I make a choice. I make a choice to call forth my angels. Some people believe in angels, some people don't. I do. I call forth my angels to rock with me every day. And I have a little thing where I go down the alphabet. And I say, okay, my angels of awesomeness, my angels of brilliancy, my angels of courageousness, my angels of determination, my angels that are going to help me to be effective, my angels that are going to help me to have faith. So I just go down this is something I just came up with. Not to say it's the right way, but it works for me.
So in the biblical text, just excuse me, you're putting on your coat of armor
Absolutely.
before you even go out into the
Absolutely.
spiritual war.
Yeah. So
Okay,
I gear
go
up
ahead.
and I take my angels with me. And I say all the angels that have been assigned to me that I don't even know exist, come on, because I'm going to need you today, because I know there's going to be something that's going to happen in this day that I'm going to have to make some choices before I move forward, right? And so as a woman making choices, I can make a choice every day to decide who I'm going to communicate with, what text message I'm going to respond to. And sometimes we get caught up in that. If I'm going to go on social media, if I'm not going to go on social media, what music I'm going to listen to, what station I'm going to get my news from, what myths am I going to choose to believe or not to believe, and then have a conversation about why you shouldn't, embrace that myth. When we talk about mental health, embracing the mental health thing. And so when you make a choice, and I used to tell my sons this all the time, every day when you make a choice, the only choice that you can't make is the consequence of the choice that you make, regardless of whether it's good or bad.
Wow.
So if you decide to go to school and act a fool, the consequences are. However, if you choose to go into school and you give it your best shot, even if you mess up, you're going to get some favor because they know that you're trying. So as a mother, as a woman, I have the ability to be able to say yes or no. I choose to have placed myself in a space of valuing myself.
You just said something, and that young people need to really understand what she just said. You said you will have favor.
Yeah, favor.
Young people don't understand there's a thing out there, there's a spiritual realm that will bring you favor.
Yeah.
Wherever your situation is, God has chosen to give us favor.
Yeah. If you're doing the right thing, I think God will grant you favor. If you're just attempting to be a good person, because we just had this conversation, there are so many people who have not been exposed to spirituality. And they don't understand that they're spiritual beings having a human experience. Every single day we all are, because we were born in the spiritual realm. And I always say this when I'm doing eulogies at the end of life situations. I would just say, as long as we continue to call out your loved one's name and the blood runs through your veins, that spirit will remain alive. That's something that I choose to do. That's that I choose to act upon every day. And so when we're thinking about our youth, we can describe favor as just given a special treatment, special liking to, special permission to have some things happen in your life that normally don't happen if you didn't have favor. So people will always walk around and say things like, I'm blessed and I'm highly favored. Okay, well, what does that mean? I'm blessed. We all blessed. We woke up this morning.
Yes.
Because some people didn't make it past 11:59. So
That's
without
right.
you even understanding what blessed is, you blessed.
Yes.
Okay, that ain't luck.
No.
you blessed.
Blessed.
You made it to the other side another day, another moment, another hour. Right? We don't know if the end of the world is going to come. At this moment, we were told it was in 2000 that the world was going to end, right?
Yes.
But we had faith.
And people prepared for it.
People prepared for it. At the beginning of COVID, people were running.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? Running to get toilet paper, running to
Yeah.
get paper towel, all this stuff because out of fear. But when you are favored by God, He gives you knowledge. He gives you wisdom to be able
And
to
a
make
peace.
Yes, to make right decisions, make the right choices at the right time.
I remember as a director of the former program that I was over, going in every day to my staff, and I would share that before I leave home, I pray, and literally put my ego on my vanity. I leave it there. Because when we get in our house, we're free to have our egos sometimes and things, but I didn't want to bring that in my service to them. And so they were often, I would say when I walk in here, I don't bring anything in here that's adverse to you guys. I don't bring my problems from home. I don't bring the spiritual warfare to you because I got my coat of armor on. But something happens during the course of the day that challenges that, and then I have to reach back to something that you guys can't offer me. And I see people in the community that today that are not understanding that you have to prepare to go out into this world every day there are going to be unique challenges. There are going to be struggles. There are going to be people coming after you. There are going to be people coming at you, no matter how good, no how big of a Christian or a faith person you are, that's where your faith comes in. It has to kick in then. And so you describe that for our young people, because I see so many of them that walk out clothed but naked.
So they have to understand, when you get preferential treatment, when you get special treatment, that's favor.
Yes. It's not luck.
It's not luck.
Right.
It's actually favor. You know, when someone sees a child that has special potential, that child is going to get favor because that's going to be nurtured for them to be able to manifest into the person that God created them to be. Because we don't even know our gifts. Some children don't even know that they have gifts. Well, what's a gift?
Now, either one of you can explain that. What should the child, a young person, a young adult do when they have favor? How should you humble yourself and respect that favor that you're receiving? Because a lot of us get favor and then we turn around and really throw it right out the window because we think it's because of us or we think it's luck, and we don't understand that there are spirits that are supporting us. You just said angels. I believe in angels too. And I don't want to we talked last summer, I told you that I had visits from them. And so when you're in the spiritual warfare with people, that you have to understand when you are favored, how you have to walk differently. You can't be a part of certain things. You got to separate yourself. And I think that's part of the problem our young people are having, separating themselves from the things that's not going to bring them favor, which is, we'll go into that later. So am I?
Yeah, so remember I told you, first 4 chapters of Genesis, right? So Adam and Eve are put out of the garden. They are wearing the covering, the protective covering that which foretells of a sacrifice that is actually going to cover them. Because at that point, people say, God's not fair. If God was fair, he would have taken Adam and Eve out right there. That would have been the fair thing to do. And by the way, all of us were there. Adam and Eve are the source of all humans. Because of one man's sin, sin and death passed on to all of us. So technically, we were all there. And all of us were given the opportunity to do what Adam and Eve were given the opportunity to do. The problem is now we were created in the image of God, but we were born in the nature of Adam.
A man.
Right? And we need redemption. So what happens next? Genesis 4, they give birth to these 2 sons. And Eve says, I've received a man of the Lord. So she recognized 2 things. What he was a man, and where she got it from was of the Lord. Just a side note, kids come, so easily, we lose sight of the fact of that every birth is a miracle.
Absolutely.
There are people that try to have kids and don't.
Okay.
And there are folks who weren't really trying to have kids and do. Why is that? Because we don't determine that. When you perform the act, God in his sovereignty chooses.
So
Right.
going back to relationships,
Yes.
you have a choice,
Mm.
Who you're going to, engage with.
Right.
And sometimes because of those choices that we make,
Right.
And we're making choices basically now from sight and flesh versus anything spiritual.
I can meet my emotional need
Right now.
outside of the design, the will, and the purpose of God, and there will be no consequence. See, people, it's a legal act, it's a physical act, but it's also a spiritual act.
Explain the spiritual
Happy to do that.
concept.
God said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, cleave unto his wife, and they two shall become one flesh. So the act of sexual intimacy, and in the New Testament we're told, in order to avoid fornication, let every man see that he has his own wife and every see that she has her own husband. Sex was created by God and designed by God for his purpose. Sex has gone from being a sacred act to a recreational act. And when you use it for recreation, it's not healthy for those who are recreating, and it's not healthy for those who are produced as a result of that recreation.
Now, that is
When
true.
when I was doing prison ministry, 80% of the guys who were incarcerated in prison, you know what they had in common? They either had a very poor relationship or no relationship at all with their dads.
Yes. True.
The most dangerous place for a young girl is it's a higher risk when they're not with their actual biological father and there's another guy in the house.
True.
They become sexually active earlier. They get their periods earlier when the biological dad is not in the house. This is all research,
That's interesting.
right? And often girls will go looking for love in all the wrong places, and guys will take advantage of it. They search them out, right? We were created to reflect the nature of God in earth. God is not abusive. He's not raping anyone, right? But here's the thing. He gave us free will.
Free will. I
And
speak
your
on that all the
question
time.
about turning. So the two brothers, Cain and Abel,
Mm-hmm.
they both brought an offering to God. Abel's was accepted. Cain's was not. And Cain was mad. And God asked him, he said, why are you downtrodden? Why is your countenance falling? He said, if you do well, won't you be accepted? He didn't give a verbal answer, but the next day he went out and he killed his brother. And he said, and God said, where's your brother? He said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? And God said, you know what? Your brother's blood is crying out to me from the grave. You killed him. I know where he is, and I know you did it. And he said, now you're going to be a vagabond in the earth. And what it meant, if you take two magnets, you put them together, they come right together. If you flip them or one of them around, they are pushed against each other. That's
You
what
can
that
feel that
word
force.
meant.
Yeah.
That now you are going to push against me. And he said, the ground is not going to produce for you. He was gardener. He said, you are not going to get satisfaction out of the ground. It's not going to produce for you anymore. And if you carry that on through, it stayed. He first said, this punishment is too great for me. I'm going to be this, and then people are going to kill me. He said, no. I'm not. Nobody's going to try to kill you. In fact, I'm putting a mark on you. If anybody tries to kill you, I'm going to take them out. Right? So when we sin and we turn against God, we start believing some things that God has never said that is not true. And when you turn from God, you become resistant to his truth, and you start creating your own truth. And literally, that's where we are today. People are functioning in what's called social constructionism, which basically means when you get a group of people together and we agree on something, even if objectively it's not true, it's true because we said it's true.
You said it. And we see that every day.
Genesis 3, wisdom. It was something to be desired to make one wise, right? Meaning, in spite of what God has said, I can determine for myself what is right is wrong. Social constructionism isn't new. Eve constructed it.
So the difficult thing is when you're sitting, and I've been on panels where there's been discussions about male-female relationships. And most of the conversation is carnal and flesh. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to bring the spiritual element, which people either push back on or just think it's kind of weird to even bring that in. So we're fighting a force, a spiritual force. We're doing unnatural things,
Right.
and we're expecting unnatural things from each other. Am I correct in that?
we are
So we're operating outside of God's realm.
Right.
And so everything we're doing is contrary to how easy it could be if we use his word as our GPS. And I use that with
Yeah.
young people all the time. So that's your GPS. You want to understand relationships and what you should be doing. You got a GPS in your car. Yeah, I said you need to use that GPS and get your directions from God.
You are absolutely right. Wherewithal, how shall a young man cleanse his ways? Psalms 119. By taking heed, by listening to your word. Your word, O God, have I hidden in my heart that I might not sin against you. And the Bible, when it talks about our heart, it's not talking about the thing in the center of our chest.
Yeah.
It's our mind, the way we think, our emotions, the way we feel, and our will, the choices that we make.
But let me just ask you this. So here we are in 2025, and you engage, we all engage with individuals, specifically our younger generation, who have not been exposed to the word. Right? So how do we live our lives as examples to show them the right way, the right choices to make when they're engaged constantly on social media? You know, there's not a time when I go on social media and I see a young lady that's, doing what they refer to as the clap, the hold on, and then you got these young boys that are just can't get off of it, and you're wasting time after time after time because you're so engaged in all this falsivity that we see on social media, right? So how do we sit down and talk, and what's the discussion like? What does it sound like when I'm talking to a person who has never been exposed, who doesn't know Christ, has never been introduced? And on top of that, we have so many different types of religions that have come to pass. It's like every time you read a book or you turn on the news or something, there's something different. Somebody created something. It's all this new stuff, new.
Well, here's what I've been told by young people, especially the last 15, 20 years, that we talk too much as an older generation. That they've heard it all. We're talking them to death. They think everything is a motivational speech. And so when I walk in the room, I say, I'm not a motivational speaker. You got to dispel the things that they've already built up. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not here to even tell you what you should think, make your decisions, tell you what your dreams are here. I'm really here to hear what's on your heart. And so when you listen to them, you have listening sessions. And I remember for years, I started my year off with having listening sessions where I would sit and listen to young men and young women. Then you can come back once they felt they are heard. You know how to touch them in places and provide navigation. And that's the key. It's not what we say, it's the navigating. And you got to be accessible to them. Now, everybody can't do it. They know. I tell them when I go in, you can call me 24/7. I said, I'm being honest with you. I said, but now if you call me after 10 p.m. or 12 p.m. or in the early in the middle of the night, you're going to get a different Mr. Bennett than you would get if you call me at 8, 9, 10, 11. Because what you just described that they're seeing on social media is always accessible. So if they need an alternative, if they have a question, it has to be accessible to them, us as a community, to give them the answers. And if we all pick 1 or 2 or 3, they would have alternatives to this social media. They may not give it up, but they will start questioning it. Like, let me see what Pastor McClinton is saying. Let me see what Dr. Portia is saying. And then they start becoming critical thinkers and spiritual thinkers versus flesh-driven.
Right.
thinkers.
And desiring to have those crucial conversations.
Yes.
And asking questions. But we got to make ourselves available, like you said.
Yes.
So that we're able to be engaged and not act so high and mighty, like I've never sinned before, and I'm this
Yes.
and that and the other. It's like, no, we have all sinned.
For 30 years, I told them it wasn't the good. If they come in here and tell you guys the good old days, I said it wasn't all good old days. It was some bad going on then. And I said I was part of some of it. Let's just be honest about it.
Yeah.
I said, but I'm out of that. I came out of that, and let me help you navigate to how you get out of it. So we have to be the option that they have, but they don't feel we listen to them.
Right. But then again, we also have to live our lives
Yes,
like an open book and be transparent and being honest,
that's true.
in the conversation. So when you look at me, what do you see?
Yes.
And asking ourselves, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? when you look in the mirror, what do you see? So when they look at us, what do they see?
Well, when we come back, we're going to take a break. We're going to talk about what should we be modeling to fight this spiritual warfare that our young people have found themselves entrapped by. See you in a few minutes.
Claudine Jackson thought she had it all until she was faced with the challenges of raising an autistic child. Inspired by autism is her brutally honest journey filled with heartbreak and triumph. Get your copy and find the support you deserve today by visiting www.claudinejackson.tv.
Have you ever wanted your own TV show? Have you dreamed of showcasing your talent for the world to see? Well, now you can. Have your own TV show. You can have your own 30-minute show. Not only will you be seen in the Detroit area, but you can be viewed worldwide. For more information, call 313-868-6612. Visit our studios and receive a free TV interview to promote your business, church, or organization by appointment only.
I'm Deborah Geraldine Bledsoe Ford, and I want to tell you about Michigan's other first family of law. My grandfather, Attorney Harold Bledsoe, became the first Assistant Attorney General in the state of Michigan. Two of his three children were judges, Geraldine Bledsoe Ford and William Felga Bledsoe. My husband, Attorney Jerome Watson, was one of the first Black partners in Miller Canfield, and I became a judge in 2005, following in my family's footsteps.
Muscles, joints, or feet tired, achy, or distressed? Tried everything? Ringmaster Rubbing Oil is a vintage topical pain reliever, trusted for over 70 years, with a rich formula for the treatment of stubborn aches and pains. Packaged in a glass bottle for purity, our liquid can also be used in warm water for foot soaks and compresses. A little goes a long way. Try our time-tested formula, available in several sizes.
Make a donation to WHPR-TV and receive two 2-ounce bottles of Ringmaster Rubbing Oil for $25. Call 313-868-6612.
You ready to put your podcast on iHeartRadio? Yes, your podcast on iHeartRadio. What about Alexa, Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Android, or iPhone? Plus live TV streaming. Get your podcast seen and heard all over the world. Call 313-868-6612. Pre-recorded shows are accepted to be archived. This is a WHPR distribution platform. Download the app from the App Store. Go to WHPRTV.com. Channels available for lease 24/7 on Roku, Fire Stick, or Apple TV. Coming soon, subscription and pay-per-view.
Also,
Block time is available. Get yours. Call 313-868-6612. That's 313-868-6612. Executive producer R.J. Watkins. Program director Henry Tyler. 107.5 FM WGPR HD2. RadioWeCanSee.com.
Hi, my name is Norman Clement. I'm the president and CEO of Detroit Change Initiative, located at 2937 East Grand Boulevard, Detroit, Michigan 48202. Detroit Change Initiative is a recognized 501c3 nonprofit focused on creating a platform that amplifies the people's voice for a collective change. Our website is www.dcimovement.org. You can contact us at info@dcimovement.org. We're a proud sponsor of Truth to Power TV show.
I wasn't ready. One minute he was here, the next one gone. What do? No life insurance, no savings, just funeral costs, unpaid bills, and fear. I can't keep living like this. Life insurance just wasn't for him to get. It was for us, for all of us, for the ones left behind. Love your family enough to plan ahead, because love lives on. Let me, Joey Combs, help you write your last love letter to your family. I can be reached at www.linktree.com/Joey Combs. I am a life insurance broker. I can be reached at www.linktree.com/Joey Combs. Let me, Joey Combs, help you write your last love letter to your family.
WGPR Detroit HD2.
You're watching WHPS, Highland Park, Detroit.
All right, we're back on Truth to Power. This is Friday, March the 28th, and this is a good Friday because we've been having a good conversation about our people, about our futures, about our promise, and the things most certainly about the God that we all serve. And we're trying to clear some things up for our young people. And as we left off, Dr. Portia asked a question like, how do we break that cycle where young people are getting all the false information from social media and the things that they're seeing, the images, and those are flesh-driven things. And I think we have to go spiritual when they're going flesh. And my thought process was that we have to start listening to them because it really cries out that we're seeing. Social media, sometimes when I look at social media, it's young people crying for attention. It's young people crying for validation. It's young people crying for love. It's young people crying for help. And so I use social media a lot because I don't wager into that spiritual warfare, and sometimes I turn the screen quickly so I don't get caught up in that. But I'm looking for certain things as a passageway to topics and listening sessions where we can draw them in and fit them in. So let's go down that road. What do we see that we can do? What can we offer as a community, not just the three of us, as an alternatives for our young people?
Well, there's several, organizations that are out, in our community. No one person, no one organization can do all the work that needs to be done. True. And so, I attribute a lot of the work that is being done to you, Keith, because, as you said, you have been in this space for 50 years. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of programs that are now currently active come from, your blueprint.
Wow.
And then they kind of added on their own little flavor to it. But I commend you for just doing the work.
Well, let me share this before you go on. So my blueprint, and I tell young men this now, and young women, I can count 65 mentors, life navigators coming through my journey as a youth that I have. So I took their blueprints. I refused to change, but I tweaked things. And I made it more attractive to the people that I was serving. But sound doctrine, you just don't change it.
Right. But you put your different flavor to it.
Yes.
Because everybody wants a different type of a flavor.
Yes.
You may prefer orange, I may prefer grape.
Yes.
So whatever that looks like, in a conversation piece, we have to be able to meet those individuals, where they are.
Yes.
Right? And so, my question was, when people look at Keith Bennett, who do they see? Who is the real Keith Bennett?
Well, that's the thing, that I try to be Keith Bennett every day. I was asked at a conference at the Eastern Market last summer, widely attended. I think it was over 1,000 people there by the Block organization. And I was asked on a panel, Mr. Bennett, how do you show up every day? I said, I show up as I am. I'm not going to put on airs. And we were talking during the commercial about how do we present ourselves. I think Dr. Portia, how do we present ourselves every day in the community where we're role models? And I think we have to be honest. When I engage young men, whether I went into prisons, Pastor McClinton, or I'm in my programs that I've had, or listening sessions, I always started with my dirt. My failures. I always wanted to let them know I'm not this guy walking in who you just they read my bio or they introduced me as this and that. This is who I really am. I'm the guy that should have graduated in June 1973 that didn't have enough credits at McKenzie High School. And so I didn't graduate until January 1974, 6 months later. But I was a good student. But my head was other places. My focus was other places. I was drawn into things I should, but I'm that guy. And so I'm the guy that didn't meet his dad until he was 35 years old, and he was already a bonus father and the day he became a biological father. So God was intentional about letting me meet my dad on that day. My life mirrors somewhere somebody else's in our community. And once they can see that you can overcome those things, I'm the guy that stole 2 money orders from Adams Party Store, who was on Puritan and Myers back in the day. Black man, owner party store, hired me, trusted me enough where he can go home and eat dinner with his family. And when he left out, I just thought it was pieces of paper. You put 500 on that machine, you put it across, put the date. I put one in my pocket. I want to put mag wheels on my car. So as the devil would tell you, if it's nothing but paper. So I went back in there and got a second one. Put $500, ran it across, put it in my pocket. A month later, I walk in and he said, Keith, when you come in, close the door. Lock the door behind you. Business day, lock the door. So he said, I need to talk to you in the back. He took me in the back. He said, I want to ask you a question. Did you take 2 $500 money orders from me? No. And I asked young people, what answer do you think I gave him? And they all laughed. They said, I told him, I don't know, I didn't. And then he asked me again. That process, that sound doctrine kicked in. Tell the truth. The truth will do what?
Set you free.
Set you free. Did you take the $500 money orders? Yes. I'm so disappointed. I'm so heartbroken. But I am also, after he scolded me, I am proud of you too. Why? He said, because you stopped me from picking this phone up and calling the Detroit Police Department. Because that was a felony. $999, he had done that. The 1,000 was a felony. I'm not going to call them. You're going to work this off. My life flashed in front. We were making $2.15 an hour. Minimum wage. I'm going to work the rest of my life. And so he allowed me to work for another maybe 45 days, called me in one day. He said, man, you'll never make this. He said, but here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm proud of you, but you're fired. Fired? Yeah, I can't trust you anymore. And I don't feel right because I can't trust you in my space. But I didn't make that call. That is the grace. That is the favor that drove me for 50 years next year to understand the spiritual nature of what we're dealing with, that people deserve a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance.
Keith, I appreciate you sharing that story because, again, there's nothing new under the sun. And I quote a lot of Bible verses because I just believe that the word of the truth will set you free. There's a passage that says, and we know that all things, Romans 8:28, we know that all things work together for the good, but it's conditional. You know, sometimes people only like to quote part of verses.
Yes.
But you know, with God, all things work together for good. No. All things work together for good to them that love God and to those who are called according to his purpose.
Yes.
Right? Luke 4:18. After, the story, Jesus was tempted. And the Bible says he was in all points tempted, just like we are. And there's only one temptation. Do I know what God has said? If I do know, do I trust what God has said? Or is my attitude, I know what he said, I don't care what he said? That's giving into it. But When you give in to temptation, there are 5 consequences that flow from giving in to temptation. Jesus, after he had been tempted with everything, in Luke 4:18, he says this, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because I am anointed to do 5 things. 1, preach the gospel to the poor. What's the gospel? That's the good news. That's the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. If you've given in to temptation, and we all have, you deserve to be tossed into the lake of fire. But I got good news for you. I paid that debt for you if you will receive it. Then he says, give sight to the blind. Blindness is a way of thinking and reasoning that is not connected to truth, but I fight for it like it is truth. He said, I can give you sight so you can see clearly, right? All white people are devils. All black people are not completely human. That's blindness. That ain't true.
That's not true.
Right? All men are dogs. All women are, that's not true. They're all created in the imago Dei. They bear the image of God. Even the ones that are doing wrong stuff, they still bear the image of God. So I can do that for you. And then he says to heal the brokenhearted. As a result of sin, either the sins I've committed or been committed against me, and the same for everybody else, people got broken hearts. He said, I can heal you. And then he says, preach deliverance to the captive. There are people that are shooting stuff in their arms, sniffing stuff up their nose, drinking, and don't think there's any way they could live their life without that stuff. He says, no, I can deliver you. And then I love in the Amplified, the 5th thing is this. He says, I can send forth as delivered those who have been crushed by any circumstance. So your past does not have to dictate your future.
No.
But here's the thing. Everybody is an iceberg. What you see is the result of what you can't see. If you can catch a glimpse of this, it may not make this right, but it make sense, right? And then you can start reasoning with them, listening to them. So when you're listening, what you talked about earlier, when you're seeing this, listen for this. What's driving this? And then when you speak truth to this, it'll change this.
Dr. Pete, broken hearts. Pastor McClendon just opened it up. That's your business.
Broken hearts.
Helping people mend broken hearts.
Helping them to heal. Offering them hope and holding their hearts. And we have so many people that are broken on so many levels, and they don't even know that they're broken.
Right.
Because of past relationship, past hurts, fathers not being in the household, mothers allowing things to be able to happen in the household because, it's better to have a man in the house as opposed to not having a house and not having a conversation, about, what's happening to my daughter, and nowadays even about what's happening to my sons because this man been in the house. So again, choices, that we make. So brokenness. And so how do we begin the process of helping people heal, offering them hope and holding their hearts by what we're doing at the foundation? Having those conversations. We allow people to actually stand up and tell their testimonies of what they're doing, their brokenness, telling their truth. I mean, we had one person who got up and she talked about, it was her message, her testimony was so profound, but something good came out of it. She said, she lost her sight. She had been in an abusive relationship. Her former husband had shot her, and it caused some brain damage and caused her to lose her eyesight, period. And she wrote a book, and I do believe it's called He Loved Me, He Loved Me Not.
Stop there for a minute. Woo! And I want you to dive in that. But here's something that I think you and I was sharing this with another licensed therapist 2 nights ago. And I ask young people when I meet with them now, who is your love doctor? And before they can answer that, I always say, don't even give answers. Just stop there. Now, who was your love doctor's love doctor? Don't answer that. Stop that. Who was your love doctor's love doctor's love doctor? I said, because we've been getting these interpretations of love sometimes from generation after generation after generation. I said, now you have young women women telling men, I love you, don't have a clue. Men saying, I love you, don't have a clue. Mothers telling their kids, I love you, and then 3 months later abusing them, maybe even killing them, and the child sitting there like, this is love. She loves me. She loves me. But she's abusing me, but she loves me. This is what love is. It's abuse.
Yeah. You know, I used to work at a home for abused and neglected children years ago. As a matter of fact, it was my first job, out of college. Edwin Denby Children's Home. It was run by the Salvation Army. And one of the things that you would ask children, is, we're going to get you into a foster care situation. But they always wanted to go back, no matter how traumatic the abuse was. They still wanted to go home.
That's my mama, that's my daddy.
And they love me.
Yeah.
That was love.
That was love. This is the way they love, and so this is how we love. This is how we do what we do in our household. I want to go home. I want to be with my family, no matter what the situation. But going back to the book, she said how she thought she was supposed to be loved, and how love was displayed was just completely opposite. But she stayed in the relationship because of children. When you have children, sometimes we stay in toxic relationships because of the children.
Yes.
What is society going to say? What is everybody going to say? Because you're the couple that's made in heaven.
Yes.
All these wonderful things, and everybody's looking to you all, but it's a toxic situation. So we put this smile on.
Yes.
We put this mask on, and during COVID, we were double masking, and there were so many things that were wrong. So how do we begin to show love? What does love look like? It says God is love. So if you're loving me like God loves me, you're going to love on me, okay? You're going to talk to me with respect. You're going to value me. You're going to encourage me.
You're going to listen to me.
You're going to listen to me and listen to me and listen to me, and I'm going to listen to you. We're going to have that dialogue because it's all about communication. And so if we're doing those things like a godly type of love, then we won't leave room for a lot of hate that takes
I don't have
place.
mine here. It's down here. But we take that cell phone
Yeah.
and we go on social media and look for those answers.
Yeah.
And we hear people that are putting on, as you said, those false images and faces.
Yeah.
We don't look at what's below that cell phone, that iceberg.
Yeah. Can I, I'm actually going to do a track on this. To actually have the English word to love is really useless for any real conversation about love because it's so ambiguous. So the Koine Greek provides the 4 distinct types of love. One is eros, that's erotic sexual love. The second is storge, which is the natural affection primarily for kids, but for kindred. And we're told in Timothy, one of the signs of the last days is that people will be without natural affection. So the attack on children from the womb to that is all a sign of what's happening. The third type of love is phileo love, where we get the city of Philadelphia of brotherly love. But I've learned that word actually has 2 meanings. One is the fact that we have something in common. You can take a Klansman and a black nationalist, and if they both like the Lions, they can put on a shirt, go to the game, and be rooting. Why? Because there's something that we have in common. But there's a seamy side to the word of phileo, and the definition is treachery. It's where you use an act of affection for the purpose of treason. And where was it seen in Scripture? When Judas came to Jesus and he kissed him, and Jesus responded, "Betrayest thou me with a kiss?" The word was phileo. You remember Bernie Madoff? Bernie Madoff stole $6 billion from people, and he loved every one of them.
Yes.
Because you use something of affection or something that we have in common for the purpose of treachery.
So you've just outlined the relationships that we see in our community now, whether it's parental, family, but definitely male, female.
Right.
Because women feel they get betrayed by men based on the man using their love against them, and vice versa.
Yeah, vice versa. Because I saw a YouTube clip. This woman said, "Oh, he don't make enough for me. If he's not," and it was some outrageous number. She said, "I ain't giving him the time of day." Well, do you love him or the money? Right? And then there's a fourth type. I don't want to leave without mentioning that. That's agape love.
Yes, I knew that.
1 Corinthians can lay out that for you. When you use agape love, that's unconditional. You doesn't have to stop.
So that's what I point young people to in my discussions
Right.
now when they say, well, Mr. Bennett, because they're going to ask you,
Right.
how did you find out about love? And how do you know? I said, because I go to 1 Corinthians. And they all got phones on them. I said, let's Google now.
Right.
Right now.
Look it up.
1 Corinthians. Let's look it up.
Doesn't rejoice in evil.
Yes. Yes. Doesn't count. Doesn't seek revenge. I said, that's where we're at.
Yeah. But the other point, too, is we talk about parental love. We
Yes.
talk about relationship love. What about self-love?
We don't know how.
How do I love myself? So I have this little thing that I do on a regular basis, and I ask myself, is it going to bless me up or mess me up?
Ooh. Okay. Say that again.
Is it going to bless me up or mess me up?
Okay.
So by us having this conversation here today, is this blessing us up or messing us up? By the viewers, is this blessing them up or is it messing them up? Is
Yes.
it confusing them? You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? So what I eat, what I decide to eat, making choices of what I'm going to put into my temple, is it going to bless me up or mess me up? If I go to work out in the gym, is it going to mess me up or bless me up, right? If I decide to, overindulge in drugs or overindulge in drinking or even overindulge in eating too much fried chicken, is it going to mess me up or bless me up? By asking myself that question, I'm showing myself some self-love. By being in this relationship that I know is no good for me because he's in another relationship and married, is it going to mess me up or bless me up? By me continuing to have living this quote-unquote generational curses that you talked about because it's been happening for generations, or am I going to choose to figure out how to have generational blessings so
Yes.
that the children's children that come after me will live a blessed and fulfilled life?
So what I tell young people or older people now that when I have conversations is it's not so much generational curses, it's generational bad decisions. How we use our free will. And we repeat what we've seen. Habits don't lie. And so that's something that age tends to teach us better than anything, is how to love ourselves. Because we want to love ourselves through the images that we see other people in, but that may not be what's good for us.
Choices.
Choices.
It really does become how do we see ourselves and through what lens? Psalm 139, I encourage people to go back and look at it and read it in the New Living Translation. I'll just read part of it. The psalmist says, I could ask, you made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. How precious, watch this, are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I can't even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand. And when I wake, you are still with me. Think about that saying. God's thoughts, your precious thoughts about me, they can't be numbered. They're more than the grain of sand. So if I have a low image of myself, That's not truth. God loves you. He created, he knit you together in your mother's womb. He has purpose for you. He has gifted you. You mentioned earlier, there's some people, they don't know their gifts. I do a workshop, spiritual gifts, and I show you, there's some gifts you have. I use a crack house and a church house, and I show you how they function in both, right? And the problem is, in the crack house, it's functioning through our sin nature. And the only way we can get it right is by taking on the nature of Christ, which is receiving him. The last other thing I'd mention is that you remember the story, Lazarus died, Mary and Martha's brother. Jesus waited 4 days, showed up on the scene. They were a little upset. It's like, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died, right? And he said, well, I'm the resurrection and the life. Roll the stone back, and he said, Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus came forth. But then Jesus made this statement. Now remove the grave clothes. See, back then when they buried you, they wrapped you, they put a veil over your face. So he came out of there, but he was bound. You can be saved and bound. You can be saved, but not free. You can be saved and free and not healed. You have to do all of those things, right? There are some people come to church, they become a church member, but they're not in Christ.
Let's hold that. We're going to go to break, and we're going to come back and start on that. You're watching Truth to Power.
Saturday afternoons at 12 p.m., followed by Mr. Smooth's Ballroom and Steppers Express Dance Show on WHPR 15.2 Detroit, Apple TV, Roku, and many streaming platforms. See you Saturday.
Clean up on aisle 5. Sounds like my life right now. Just one big mess.
What's going on?
It's my property taxes.
What?
I am behind, and I am so worried that I'm going to lose my house. I can pay some of it, but I can't pay it all at once.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm Eric Sabri, the Wayne County Treasurer. The last thing I want is for anyone to lose their property to tax foreclosure. We have assistance programs to help. Visit us at treasurer.waynecounty.com, and we'll help you keep your home. We're here to help. Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help. I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. If you lost your property to tax foreclosure between 2015 and 2020, you may be entitled to money, your money. But you have to file a claim by March 31st, 2025. Here's how.
If you lost your home to foreclosure between 2015 and 2020, you may be eligible for a rebate. File your claim at WayneCountyForeclosureClaims.com before the deadline ends on March 31st.
Taxpayer assistance teams are standing by to help you now.
Justice for Mario Willis. Truth. Facts. Evidence. Matter. Log into justiceformariowillis.com. Read for yourself.
Florine Jackson thought she had it all until she was faced with the challenges of raising an autistic child. Inspired by autism is her brutally honest journey filled with heartbreak and triumph. Get your copy and find the support you deserve today by visiting www.claudinejackson.tv.
Rejoining us on Truth to Power today, this is Keith Bennett sitting in for Darwin Griffin, your usual host, and we're talking about spiritual warfare. We hope this dialogue has not went too biblical. We wanted to put it in terms that the average person or anyone could understand. What are we fighting in our community, in our relationships, in our families, in our workplaces, in our churches, in our government? What are we fighting with? And a lot of times we really don't know, and so we're trying to examine that today. Where did we leave off at?
Yeah, I would just pick it up at the point. Two things. When we talk about spiritual warfare,
yes,
a lot of times we think, wickedness in high places. But the biggest spiritual warfare happens between our ears. In 2 Corinthians, Paul says the weapons of our warfare are not fleshy. We're not, so going out keying your car and, throwing eggs at you, that beating you up, that's not the warfare. He says we tear down strongholds. That's a lie. Think of an old castle. When an enemy would come, they pull up the drawbridge, light the moat, or put the alligators out and stick guns out to shoot, because they're protecting what's inside. A stronghold is a way of thinking and reasoning that is not anchored in truth, but you fight for it like it is.
Wow. Wow.
I told you you're gonna be just like your daddy.
Yes.
And I'm accepting that. And when somebody comes and says, no, you were created for a purpose. Your past does not have to dictate your future. No, this is all I've ever known. Well, now you can know something new.
Or when a woman tells a guy, you're not a man, or vice versa.
Right. It becomes normative truth.
Yes.
Right? And watch this. Social construction it requires its adherents to deny that there's anything transcendent. That truth is only what we say it is, what we create.
And we see that going on in our country today more than any place, maybe in the world right now.
I'm going to say something that's not politically correct, but it's biblically, it proves the biblical truth.
Yes.
The last election, right? It was two sides of the same coin. I won. I had the biggest crowd. Right? Evidence, documented evidence, was that's not true.
But sometimes when you continue to tell yourself the lie so much, your lie becomes your truth.
And it becomes other people's truth.
If you get people who are not conscious and don't make wise decisions and do investigations for themselves, then they get caught up.
Right. On that side. And this is called, in Scripture, it's the sin of error. After you've been presented clear truth and you still choose not to believe the truth, it's a spiritual sin. On the other side, you can be a woman, you can be neither, you can change, you can be gender fluid. It's biologically, not scientifically, not true. Right? But it is, and I actually had a guy tell me, he said, because they use the definition gender assigned at birth by a doctor. And I was really curious about that. So I had an expert in it, and I asked him a question. I said, what would be required to recognize someone as this kind of doctor? He said, real easy. Have to have a degree from an accredited college and work for some system, medical system. I said, great. I said, so help me understand this. In the Western world, Hippocrates is recognized as the father of modern medicine. That's where you get the Hippocratic Oath. I said, help me understand, how was his mother and father assigned male-female when the medical field of gynecology had not been created, nor pediatrics? How did that work? I said, this is objectively not a true statement. His response blew me away. He said, technically, you're right, but we have decided.
We have decided.
To use this definition. So now, even in legal documents and everything now, gender assigned at birth by a doctor is it's being pronounced as truth. I said, that's not true. Gender was assigned by God.
Yes.
And you don't assign birth when you look at the genitalia. You just acknowledge it. And that was first done by a woman called Eve. She said, I've received a man of the Lord, and where I got it from. An assignment assumes authority. As a parent, you assign chores to your kids. As a teacher, you assign homework assignments. As a general, you assign missions. And if you are assigned that, and to your point, you choose not to do it. You can choose your choice not to do it. But you may have some consequences at home. If you're in the military, you might lose your post, right? That's because you have the legal authority to make that assignment. A doctor can't assign gender to anybody. That's already been assigned. All he or she can do is acknowledge it.
Okay.
And when you don't do that, you end up with confusion.
Well, we're
which we
coming
see
down
today.
to our
I'm sorry.
last few minutes. No, it's not an issue. I wanted to talk about a meeting that you and I were in, but not so much the meeting. We're looking at mental health issues as a crisis in our community, and I see it. Clearly can see it. But we were in a meeting with, we won't mention names, but it was state level,
Senior state leaders.
state level, local level, and all. And so I was the last person. I didn't even understand why I was in the room. All these people got big titles, and so when I introduced myself, I'm like, well, I don't have a title anymore. I just work for God. You know?
Right.
And we were talking about mental health issues that are flooding our community, have changed the complexion of our community, the heinous crimes that's going on, the violence and things. And they all spoke on it. And at the end, I interjected. They asked me, they acknowledged me, and they said, we want to hear from you. What do you think? I said, well, I refuse to sit here and say all my people are mentally ill. We all have mental health issues at some points, mental struggles and things of that nature. I said, but what I see in my years is spiritual deprivation. I see spiritual illness because I think a lot of people know the difference between right and wrong, can choose, but choose to do wrong. And you guys are labeling that as mental illness, and now we're framing everybody that commits it. We're enabling our community mentally, but not empowering them spiritually. We're being critical thinkers. We're having a conscience.
Right.
We're having the doctrine to fight off. We're having reasoning abilities. So what do you guys feel about that in your work? Spiritual illness versus mental health issues. Can you see the difference? Do they overlap each other? Because this is complex. And it is a spiritual war going on. And so a lot of times, and in my work, and I'll just say this now, I was at Flip the Script for a couple of decades, we didn't have a mental health component to it. So we were successful at dealing with it because I treated it as a spiritual health issue. Listening, taking times, empathizing with people, navigating them. And we never had that come back on us, but we were smart enough to realize we're opening some wounds and we're not specialists enough. And so we started inviting mental health therapists and mental health experts to come in. But the spiritualness of what's going on shouldn't be mislabeled to me as mental health issues.
Well, I think personally that there are a lot of individuals who are not, I would say, undiagnosed, diagnosed, misdiagnosed, and don't want to accept the fact that they are diagnosed. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on right there. And again, I always go back to the spiritual component. We are all spiritual beings.
Yes.
Right? And so if my spirit is not right, then it's going to impact my mental well-being, my emotional well-being, and my physical well-being, because it's all connected. I do believe that's the way God created us. It's all intertwined. So if I don't have the capacity to make right decisions for myself and think for myself, it's going to cause me to do some other things. I remember when I was growing up in the church, and I would hear the old folks say, "I'm just thankful to be clothed in my right mind." I had no idea of what they were talking about, like clothes. You know, in the 6-year-old, 7, you're like, why would somebody want to put clothes on their mind?
Right.
Did you think that same thing too? But as I got older and became an educated black woman, I discovered, like, wow, I get it now. I truly get it. And so we do need to have those conversations. You know, I do a lot of work with Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network. They have a interfaith clergy board. And we have this conversation all the time. So now that we're here, what do we do about it?
I know for years, as a director of empowerment services that serve both men and women, but primarily men, we would have guys that would come in and have kind of mental health breakdown. And my staff would always run to my office or knock on my door and call me. And they'll all be off in the corner somewhere, you know, don't want to deal with the person. And I would always, you may not want to go, and I just walk in the room. And most of the time I would just walk in the room and just sit.
But the other thing is, Keith, is it something that individuals were born with, or is it something that happened? We think about our brothers and sisters that served in war. They didn't go over there
like that
with a twisted mind, but they came back.
Yes.
And so now that they're here, what are we doing about it? How are we helping those individuals?
Again, I'm stressing presence.
Yes.
So I went in the room a lot of times and just sat for a while, didn't approach the person. And they may engage me, may not. They may just keep doing what they're doing, just sit there and watch and listen and watch and watch. And every once in a while I may say something and see if I get a reaction, whatever. I had a person come in my office. I used to keep my blinds open in my office. And I kept my door open all the time. And so a guy came in and closed my door once and shut the blinds. And I'm sitting, he's having this fit. He's sitting in front of me, he's threatening me. And so it wasn't for about half an hour, my staff noticed. Something's wrong, Mr. Bennett's blinds has been closed, his door is closed, that guy went in there, that's not like him. So I'm sitting there trying to type on my keyboard with them and they're not responding and answering. So I just talked to the guy. I just talked to him. And I said, brother, let me share this with you. Take your time. We're gonna walk through this. And so even though that was mental health, there was a spiritualness that I could use to at least be in his presence to let him know you're not walking alone. And so during this spiritual warfare, we have to use and turn to each other to let each other know that we're here. We may not can solve it, but you're not alone.
But being intentionally present,
Yes.
not just showing up.
Yes.
Anybody can just show up.
Yes.
But are you here?
Yes.
Are you hearing me? Are you seeing me?
Yes.
And how are you going to help me?
Right. And then go in accusing him of anything and saying you're acting crazy and all that. Just, I'm here. I'm here.
He knew something was wrong.
Yes.
And eventually you knew something was wrong,
Yes.
right? And so here's the deal. Is in this day and age now, we have to have those crucial conversations as in any workplace, and all the schools need to be going through some training. We're doing a great job, I think, with our police, doing the training with mental health as it pertains to our police departments,
Yes.
our EMTs that go
Yes.
in, our firefighters, all those individuals who engage with our community on a regular basis. We even need to be having the conversations within the churches. You know, how do you engage with someone that may come in your doors in your sanctuary and there's some issues? Do you just take them and you just throw them out and just say, man, you can't come up in here? You know, they're coming because they know they're sick.
Yes.
There's something wrong. They're screaming, help me.
But again, as you said earlier, and as Pastor said, we have to be in our spiritual mind a role model what we really want them to see, an alternative. And so we have to do that.
Yeah. Two quick things came to mind. First, we change words, but what we call trauma today is what was biblically referred to as iniquity. And I define it as the sum total of the sins that we commit, sins committed against us, and the consequences that flow from that.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
In Proverbs 16, it says, only by mercy and truth is iniquity purged, and by the fear or the reverence of the Lord men depart from evil. Right? Two other examples. There's a story of the servant who owed thousands of dollars to his master. The master was going to sell him and everything, and he pleaded with him, give me time, I'll pay, and he forgave him, right? And then he turned around, somebody owed him a half a day's wages, and he was like, no, I'm throwing you in prison, and, till you pay me. The other servants went back to the master and said, listen, this guy, you got to know what he did. His response was, he said, the king called the man in that he had forgiven and said, you evil servant, I forgave you tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Should you not have mercy on your fellow servant just as I had mercy on you? Then the anger of the king sent him to prison to be, watch this, tortured until he had paid his entire debt. And then Jesus says, that's what your heavenly Father will do if you refuse to forgive your brother and sister from the heart. That's Jesus talking. People who, particularly Christians, everybody needs to do it, but those who identify themselves as Christians, one of the hardest things is being willing to forgive. I can't tell you how many times I've had people say, yeah, I'm saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost. But if Keith ever come around, I will never forgive him for what he done, right? Here's the problem. If you've seen the commercial, and I need to contact the folks, J.G. Wentworth, if you have a structured settlement and you need cash now, what do? You call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now, right? So somebody owes you, it's legitimate. What they did to you, what they said to you was wrong, was wrong. And you want them to pay. Jesus says, remember, because of sin, Luke 4:18, I can heal your broken heart. I can send you forth as delivered, right? But he says, you got to forgive. Why? Because when you take that money from J.G. Wentworth, when he makes you whole, and the person comes back the next year, they owe you $1 million, they're paying you $1 a year, and they come back in January 2026 to give you $1, you can't take that $1. Why? Because you've been made whole. You got to send them to JG. That's JG didn't come up with that. That's Jesus' model. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. I will pay your debt, and then I want to leave you here as my testimony, as an example of how I can take your mess and turn it into a message of my grace. I can take your test and turn it into a testimony of my power.
And you know what? We started off talking about the foundation, but that's exactly what I had to do when my son was murdered.
I know you did.
I had to forgive that person. I don't even know I don't know what the circumstances were. I don't even know who it was. And I remember the phone call that I got the next day from someone from one of the Atlanta newspapers, and they asked me, how do you feel about your son being another black male being murdered, another statistics? How do you feel? And at that point, I was so angry as how dare you call me? I'm in the middle of the most traumatic experience a mother could probably have. And you're asking me, how do I feel? I don't know you, you don't know me, but you're trying to write a story. And that hurt me to my core. I had to forgive her. And then the fact that it was never resolved, it's still a cold case to this day. But I had to make a conscious decision to say, I have to forgive this person. I don't know if it was a male or female, old or young. I don't know what the nationality is or anything. But as to whoever it is, I said, God, help me to forgive that person so that I can move on. And there's been things that I've done in my life or allowed to happen to me where I had to forgive myself for allowing it to happen, or forgiving myself for putting myself in that space. So forgiveness is so powerful. It's so freeing.
Yes.
So when you're able to release and just let go and move forward, your life changes. Things begin to shift in your life. You begin to feel some type of spiritual elevation that you're able to go to a higher level and just say, okay, I'm done with all this. I'm ready to move forward.
So in my teaching with young people, because they're not where you are, you two guys, here's how I translate that to them. I was taught that when I hold you bound, I got to stay there to hold you bound. I got to stay there, whether I like it or not. But if my anger and my revenge is such that I want to hold you bound, I have to stay there. I choose not to stay there. So what do I have to do? I have to release you.
Absolutely.
So I can move on.
Here's the other thing. This is a God question. Can I trust that God is just? It's really a God question. And ultimately, what helped me, because injustice has always been a thing for me, the idea that an older black man in the South, and I know it was real, not only in the South, in the North, to have some white kid the black man would have to call him sir. That level of disrespect, that has always gotten me. But two verses healed me. One is Romans 1:18, which says this: the wrath of God, the creator of the known universe, is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and all of the unrighteous acts of men who hold back the truth in unrighteousness. In other words, who, knowing the truth, will hold the truth back to advantage themselves and or disadvantage us or anyone. And again, and I tell people, we don't have a race problem. It's not a skin problem, it's a sin problem. Snowball white to charcoal black, the problem is still the same. The other verse was 1 John chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. He says, my little children, don't practice sin. But if you sin, you have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous, who is, and I love this in the King James, the word is propitiation. It's just, it simply means it is paying the full debt. He's paid the full debt for our sins. And I need that, right? But then it says this, and this is what helped me. But not for ours only, but for the sins of the whole world. So any sin that someone else has committed against me and I want a pound of flesh, guess what? Jesus is my pound of flesh. So now Matthew 5 makes sense, where it says, bless them that curse you, pray for them that despitefully use you and say all manner of evil against you. Because that made no sense. It's like, wait a minute, they cuss me out, they do bad stuff to me, and I'm supposed to bless them? I'm supposed to pray for them? I got a fivefold prayer. Right? No. I can actually pray for them. Why? Because he's paid my debt. And the only reason they did what they did is because they don't have a right relationship with him, and God has trusted me enough to be his representative to them.
So just like we encourage people to have faith forward, we can encourage our youth to have forgiveness forward.
Not just our youth.
Everybody,
Adults,
anybody.
everybody.
I'm just saying everybody.
Yeah.
Forgive forward,
Yeah.
because there's somebody that we're holding on to. Even if we said, I forgive you, I'm done with it. There's that little small situation that happened years ago. Can't rewind the tape, but we can have the ability and the capacity to be able to move forward in love. Because God is love, agape love, unconditionally.
Yeah, unconditional.
One of the things I used to tell both judges from the Third Circuit in Wayne County 36th District is just because you see an adult come in at 5'10", 6 foot, 200 pounds, whatever, and they 24 years old on their paperwork, that mind and that heart and that spirit is not matured, that they don't know what they don't know, and so they need some grace. And that if you give them over to me, then I'll be the advocate. I'll be that grace that they would receive. And so some of our people in our relationships, when we meet people, and I'm speaking to people that are out in the community, when you meet somebody, give them that grace. And you never know what that relationship would turn into and prosper into and grow into. We don't give each other grace.
Can I share a quick story that exemplifies that? I got a call from a friend of mine who's a pastor. He said, I need you to talk to somebody on my staff. I said, why do I need to talk to somebody on your staff? He said, well, actually, we were in a staff meeting the other day, and he said he blew up in such a way that, if he had had a weapon, I'm not really sure what would have happened. I said, you want me to talk to him? He said, yeah. I said, okay, well, set it up. He said, so we got in the room. And so I asked him, I said, share with me what happened in this meeting. And he recounted, and it was just as my friend had said. I said, well, at the risk of upsetting you, it would appear to me this is probably not the first time you felt what you felt in that meeting. And he said, no. I said, so what I need you to do is think for a minute. What was the very first time you ever remember feeling what you felt in that session? And he sat there and he thought, and all of a sudden his eyes kind of popped. I said, okay, so what was that? He said, when I was about 8 years old, I had to go stay with my aunt and uncle, my mom's brother and his wife. And he said, his words, every day she beat me. I said, beat you for what? He said, she accused me of turning the heat up in the house. He said, I'm new to the house. I don't, you know. He said, but one night I just decided I'm not getting beat today. So he said, I tried to stay up. He said, about 5 o'clock in the morning, my uncle gets up, gets dressed, fixes something to eat. And I cracked my door, and he said, as he was leaving, he went over and adjusted the thermostat. He said, so great, I'm not getting beat today. Opens his door, tiptoes across the floor, gets over to the thermostat, goes to turn it down, and as soon as he touches it, all the lights come on. Auntie says, you lying so-and-so, I knew you were doing it. She beat him again. Wow. So that evening when they're having dinner, recounting their day, she pointed, that so-and-so nephew of yours, I caught him, you know, turning up the heat, and I whooped his uncle's response was, he just kept eating. So in his heart now, anytime somebody questions what he feels,
that's what he does.
He's a 300-pound man, dark skin, baritone voice, and when he speaks, the windows shake.
Well, that's what we're going to leave off today. We hope that you have gotten something out of this conversation. Spiritual warfare, it is real. Every one of us are being affected by it. We thank Darwin Griffin. We thank the producers and everybody for allowing us to come in and share this with you today. If you think that this conversation has helped you, empowered you, and brought you forward out of something, let the station know, and we'll be happy to come back and continue this dialogue. Until then, Godspeed, peace, be safe, and pray on what's going on. Thank you.